Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Ferry Project Cookery School. My name is Alison and I am going to be cooking for you this afternoon. I'm going to make two things. We're going to make a Brussels sprout with cheddar soup, and we're going to make some stuffed Bretts and fougasse. And I will talk about it and show you it all as we go along. But I'll just take a couple of minutes while we wait for a few people to be logging on, just to tell you a little bit about what we do here. We are a cookery school. We're based at the Ferry Project, which is a homeless charity in Wisbech. And we are primarily here in the cookery school to teach our hostel clients how to cook. So they're homeless, they're staying with us in the hostel. We're helping to support them to get them back out into the community, get them back into work. And we're also here to teach them how to cook so they can look after themselves when they go back out into the community. And we run group sessions with them, we run individual sessions with them. We're putting together a cookery booklet for them at the moment, so they've got some recipes to take with them when they move on to their next place where they're going to live. We've been really busy this year. We've been writing another cookery book as well. So we've got this 4 Seasons cookbook, which is available to pre-order on Amazon. It's actually coming out on the 22nd of February. But if you go on Amazon and put in Alison Crouch, this will come up and you could pre-order it and find lots of other nice recipes as well. There are 2 recipes that I'm making this afternoon are actually in this book. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to make some bread, get that rising. We're going to make a soup, and then we're going to go back to the bread, and I've got some pre-made dough which I'll knock back and show you how to stuff it and how to shape it. So the first job is to get the bread dough on the go. So I've got some strong bread flour in here. Really important you use bread flour. It has a higher gluten content than normal flour, which goes really elastic and stretchy when we get it wet, when we add the water in. And that means that when that yeast is giving off its carbon dioxide, it's stretching that gluten out and making the bread rise. So in here I've got 225 grams of strong bread flour. And I'm actually using fresh yeast this afternoon, but there's no reason why you couldn't use dried yeast. It will work just as well. But I happen to have some fresh yeast in my fridge. Really good in the freezer as well. You can just ping an ice cube of yeast out and use frozen yeast. So I'm just going to stir it into the water. Into my flour, I've also put a tiny little bit of salt. Be a bit careful with salt because you don't want to kill the yeast. But it's quite important, not just for a little bit of flavour, but it also helps to strengthen those gluten strands as well so that they will go stretchy and not snap and break. And I'm also just going to add a little tiny bit of oil. I'm just using a little bit of English rapeseed oil here, just because that helps make the bread a little bit more supple and soft. And it'll make it last slightly longer as well, unless you've eaten it too quickly, which is what I tend to do. Right, so I've just put that fresh yeast in there. It's made my water go lovely and cloudy, and I don't want to waste any yeast. I don't want to leave it in the jug. I'm just going to pour that in there. I'll be a little bit careful. I haven't got too much water, and give it a stir around, form it into a dough, and then really important to knead it. Right, so I'm going to get my hands in there now. Form it into a dough, mop up all that flour that's in the bowl. So we've got that there. So I've got a nice dough here. It feels really soft already, but it's going to change as I knead it. And ideally, I'll knead it for 10 minutes, but I'm not going to stand here and have 10 minutes of you watching me knead. But I'll show you the start off of it. So I'm just rolling a little bit in the flour just to get a little bit of the stickiness. Move some of that out of the way so we don't get too dry dough. And I'm just going to knead it. So at the moment it looks quite sort of rough and ready, but as we knead it and stretch that gluten and pull it back on ourselves, so I'm using this bit of my hand and stretch and pull it back, stretch and pull it back. And over 10 minutes, it's going to change and it will become much paler, much stretchier, and much smoother as well, so that gluten stretches. And all the time that we're kneading, we're getting that yeast in contact with the natural sugars in the flour, which it's going to feed off, and it will start giving off that carbon dioxide, which will help make our bread rise. So ideally sort of 8 to 10 minutes of kneading. And then what we're going to do is just put it to one side. Imagine that's 8 to 10 minutes of kneading. I'm going to put it to one side, cover it over with a cloth and just leave it. An hour and a half is a really good amount of time to leave it, really gives that yeast time. I'll show you a dough. So this one I've kneaded and it's just been rising. I'm just going to leave it over there to continue for a bit longer. And I'm just going to bring over the soup ingredients. So in my soup, this is Brussels sprout and cheddar soup, and we're going to start off by, into my pan, we're going to add in some butter and a little bit of the rapeseed oil. So butter for some flavour, a little bit of rapeseed oil. If you just use butter, it tends to burn, so it's always best to do a little bit of butter and a little bit of rapeseed oil at the same time. Stops the butter from burning on the bottom of the pan. And just let that melt off. While that's melting off, I'm just going to turn my ring up a bit. Get that going. We're going to be prepping some of the base ingredients for the soup. So we've got red onion. I tend to use red onion in this sort of soup because it's a little bit sweeter than white onion. If you've only got white onion in your fridge, just use some white onion. So you can see I've taken off the end of the onion, I've taken off the outer layers, and I've diced it. So cut it horizontally. I've left the root end on, that helps hold it together. And I'm just going to go sideways across, but I'm not going right through. It's still being held together by this root end. And then I'm going to go sideways. I call it chips. And then I'm going to go this way. And this is where you can decide how big a dice you want your onion to be. So if I was making like a vegetable curry or something like that, I'd probably do slightly bigger dices. But because I want it in a soup and I'm going to fry it off and I'm going to puree the soup, I'm just going to do little tiny pieces. Like so. And then when I get to that root end, I can just trim round and then just discard that chewy bit there. So that's ready to go into the pan. I've also got some garlic. I've got a couple of cloves of garlic which I've taken the skin off. I'm just going to crush that on top of that onion. Do that one as well. And take those bits out. It's quite good to crush it. You get a bigger surface area, which means you get more flavour in the dish. But if you wanted to just chop it or you want to crush it with the can. I'm also going to add in some ginger. And the way to skin ginger is to just, because the peel is very, very thin, you just get your teaspoon and run it down the side. Although there is a growing sort of body of people who say, why peel it? The peel is so thin, if you're putting it into a soup and blitzing it, actually there's more nutrition, fibre and so on in there as well. So if you wanted to peel it, just use your teaspoon and just run it down, then you don't lose too much of that ginger. And then I'm going to just slice it, and I'm going to just cut it into almost like matchsticks, and then sideways again. And there we go, put that in there. And hear my butter sizzling away nicely. I don't want to overcook it, so we'll get this in fairly rapidly. So I've got my onion, my garlic and my ginger all going into that pan. Now we'll just soften that down a little bit. Move that stock over there. Okay, so whether you can see that, it already looks lovely with all those colours with that onion and the flecks of ginger and garlic. Just get that softening down a little bit. Obviously, you know, I'm doing sprout and cheddar, and so it's quite simple. You don't need lots and lots of different ingredients. But there's no reason why you can't use whatever you've got in your cupboard. You could, if you've got some potato, you could add in potato. If you've got leeks, you can add in leeks. So don't be afraid to adapt it, use up, whatever you've got left in your fridge from whatever you've been eating as well. Right, that's frying off quite nicely. So into that, I'm going to add in my Brussels sprouts. I've got about 700 grams of sprouts. These have been peeled, and you can make this actually either with raw sprouts, or if you've got sprouts left over from a Sunday dinner, then you could use those as well. It just won't take as long to cook, that's all, because you've already cooked the sprouts. So I'm going to add my sprouts in whole. I haven't chopped them up. So you can see those in there. I'm just going to stir that round. It smells really nice already. You can smell all that onion and garlic and ginger flavour all merging together. A little bit. And then all I need to do is stir in my stock. So I've just got about 700 mils of vegetable stock, which I'm just going to pour in there. So, what you could do is you could cook your sprouts beforehand and then use the water in the soup from that as well. So what I need to do now is just leave that in there. I'll tip it a little bit and to simmer. I'll put the lid on, so I don't want to lose all that liquid, because obviously that's an important part of soup. So we'll put that on there and just turn it down a little bit. And then we're going to go back to our bread, because we need to be getting our bread stuffed and cooked, ready to serve with our soup. So I've got some smoked bacon. Don't have to use bacon in there. If you're vegetarian, then obviously leave the bacon out. You could use other things such as chorizo, if you wanted a bit of a spiciness to it. So I'll put some bacon in there to cook off. Get that frying. Let's get a sizzle going on it. Right, so we just want to cook it off. We don't want to put it into the bread raw, because it would just go quite wet and chewy. So we want it fried off in a pan beforehand. Spread it out a bit so it... Right, okay, so that's cooking. And the other thing we're going to stuff into our bread is walnuts and cheese. So we'll go back to our bread. I'm going to get the dough. So this is the dough that I'd already made. And I'm just going to knock it back. So it's quite important to knock bread back. But basically what that does is it just breaks down the gluten fibres a little bit, makes them more supple again, which then gives them the chance to go stretchy again, so you get that sort of that second rise. So I'm just going to give it that knead. And then I'm going to get the rolling pin. It's always a little bit tricky trying to roll bread dough, because hopefully it's really stretchy and it will keep sort of bouncing back on you and you think you're not getting anywhere. But bread dough's great. It's not like pastry. You can pull it and push it around and it likes it. Can't do this with pastry because it just makes it go tough and chewy. Right, so got a good length to it. And onto that, just give the bacon a bit of a stir around. We're going to put onto it some walnuts and some cheese. Now, I love this bread because you can actually stuff it with so many different things. You don't have to use walnuts. Cheese is really nice. Different cheeses. You could do like a 3 cheese type one. You could change the nuts. You can do things like put a little bit of cranberry sauce on it and brie and fold it all up and have all sorts of different fillings. Let's try and make it quite long and thin. I can hear my soup bubbling away quite nicely. Okay, so let's put a bit of cheese on. And we'll put a few walnuts on. A little bit more cheese. I want to save some cheese for the top for when it's cooked. My bacon's sizzling quite well now. I'm not going to cook it so it goes completely crispy. I just want to make sure it's cooked, because when it cooks, it obviously shrinks a little bit. You get the meat extracted, a little bit of water come out. Now, we don't want that in the bread because it would make the bread go really soggy. So that's about there. So, you could use ham. I wanted to use ham. Right, so that's done. I'm just going to spread that across. And start to just soften off that cheese a little bit. And then we're just going to do a bit like when you make puff pastry. We're going to fold the bottom and I'm pressing it down and press that down. And I'm just going to seal those edges. And then you will need a little bit of flour because obviously that bacon's hot. It might make it go a little bit soft. But remember, you're in charge of it, not it in charge of you. And just give your bread a little bit of a roll. And then I'm going to fold it again. Once more. You can see where the nuts might just start to try and push out, but just push them back in. A little bit of flour. And I'm going to roll it again. So this bread is called fougasse. It's a French style bread. And allegedly, there's lots of tales as to why it's called fougasse. But the one that I like is, it means fire bread. So what they would do is pull out all the embers of the fire once they'd finished cooking, and they would cook this as a flatbread just in the bottom of the wood-fired oven. The wood would have come from the trees, and so they would make different shapes in it. So you can cut it. So we're going to cut it now in the middle. So either, and I'll do half and half, either you do it like a tree, because it signifies the wood that you've used in your oven. You can see that. I'll pull it straight in a minute so you'll see it a bit more. Or you can just slash it straight through. So I'm going right through. I can feel my knife on the board underneath. Right through. And then just pull it. So you've got gaps. You can see the gaps in there. And then we'll put it on a tray. Now remember, this is going to rise again. So just pick it up, put it on there. Now, it's good to try and leave it to rise again for another half an hour, good 30 minutes, and then this will puff up even more. I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes while I look at the soup, which is getting very excited. I'll just turn it down a bit. Okay, so I'm actually going to pop the bread in the oven. Now, if I was not doing this here, I would leave it for another half an hour just to rise up again. But I need to get it cooked now. So I'm going to put it in the oven. I did save a bit of cheese. I'm just going to put a little bit of cheese on top. That just helps give it a little bit more colour and texture as well when it comes out. Okay, so hot oven, always cook bread in a really hot oven. We're talking about 230 degrees. You need to do it at that temperature because it means the yeast gets very excited, starts working much faster, gives off all this carbon dioxide. The protein, the gluten in the bread starts to set solid, and that's when you get that nice crusty texture and the nice soft dough in the middle. Right, let's go back to our soup. So the soup, we now need to blitz, so it should be nice and soft now. Those sprouts, yeah, that's beautifully soft. So I'm going to move it a bit closer this way because I'm just going to do it in my handheld blitzer. So obviously just be careful because it might splash your hand and it is very hot. what I'm also doing is some thyme. So I've just got some fresh thyme. You could use other herbs, but I just find thyme works really nicely in this. But any, herb would be good. A few of those. I'm not going to put the big woody branches in, but I don't mind if the smaller, flimsy ones go in, because we're going to blitz this anyway. Right, so some thyme in, and some cheddar, because after all it is sprout and cheddar soup. Saving a little tiny bit just for my garnish on the top at the end. And then we're going to blitz it. So just be careful at this stage that it doesn't flick up in your face. And they're blitzing down really nicely. So much easier with one of these than a food processor where you've got to take it out and decant it and so on. Chunky or as smooth as you like. What I quite often do, I love my blitzer and I make a lot of soups. I quite like partially blitzing the base of the soup so you've got some chunks in it as well. It just makes it feel a bit heartier. But this one is really nice and blitzy. Finish that off then. Obviously we need to taste it, see if we need to adjust the seasoning. And we're going to add a little bit of cream. Now obviously you don't have to add cream, you could just leave it like that now and that's perfectly nice soup, but it just gives it that bit of richness and it's winter, it's been cold, it's quite nice to have a little bit of richness. You could add in, oops, getting excited. Like there. So I'm just going to add my cream in. And if you don't want to add too much cream, add less. Beautiful green colour. You could use creme fraiche instead of cream if you wanted to, just thinking about those calories. And then we just need to taste it. Obviously, I did use a little bit of vegetable stock cubes as well as some vegetable water from the vegetables that I cooked this morning. Vegetable stock cubes can be quite salty, so you might not need to add any salt. Cheese is quite salty, so you might not need to add any salt, but I'll just give it a little taste. And I'm definitely going to add some pepper. And then, as with all soup, stews and everything else, obviously you're in control of the water because all of this is the liquid evaporating out. Never be afraid to either reduce something down a bit more or add a little bit extra water in just to slacken it off. That's really nice. It doesn't need any more salt for sure. Just have a look at this bread. Bread's doing good. I'll just a tad more cream. I can show you the lovely colour of this soup. And I'm going to dish up a garnish. Onto a nice wooden board, because that bread is quite big. So here's my soup bowl. Now, if I was serving this, I would also warm my soup bowl. I can't bear cold plates and bowls. So look at the lovely green colour. Get it in here. And then we'll garnish it. And then we'll get the bread. Let's just clean that up a bit. We're going to just swirl a little bit of cream over the top. We'll put a few little bits of thyme on, and cheddar. Okay, well, they're out of the way. Okay, and the bread is just about done. I have got some more bread as well that I made this morning. And I'll get this bread out as well. You could, I mean, I've made a big one. You could make 2 or 3 small ones, but I quite like the idea of having sharing bread that you tear. And for our other loaf, and I'll cut the one that's not quite as hot. Okay, so there we have it. We've got sprout and cheddar soup, fougasse, so stuffed bread, and we've stuffed it with cheese and walnuts and bacon. I'm just going to cut. That one's really fragile, so this one, so you can just see. As I say, you can just tear and share it, but look at that, beautiful. Really lovely, and then just dunk it in that soup, absolutely delicious. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we'll be on here again soon. Remember to look out for the cookery book. It's available on Amazon to pre-order now, comes out on the 22nd of February. Visit ferryproject.org.uk, our website, and if you click on Cookery School, we have an events button. If you click on that, it will take you straight to our Eventbrite page where there are lots of classes that we do. We do cook and goes, Spanish ones, Thai ones. People travel to us from all over the country. We had a lady from Yorkshire the other day came and did sourdough baking with us. So we do a whole array of different cookery courses. Thank you so much. Bye.